My name is Lorraine Thompson, and I work with Frontline Education, and I'm one of the trainers in New York State for Frontline IEP. And I'm very excited this morning to be with you. I actually implemented the IEP software at your agency a long time ago when you just started with the Frontline, we call the private provider version. So we're excited now that you're going to the full version, and a big part of the full version is the use of the RS log. Now, the other thing I wanted to remember to do, Carrie, was record this, which, there it is. Okay. So today, this morning, our concentration is going to be on the use of the RS log. And the RS log, some of you may already be familiar with it from working with other school districts that do utilize it, or other agencies. So I'm going to log in as a speech therapist. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And I said just this last week that if I had $1 for every time since March that I've said, can you see my screen, I would be able to retire again. So can you all see my screen? Just somebody nod your head. Christine Haller, I can see you. Great. All right, so I'm logging in as a speech therapist. I'm a licensed speech therapist, so therefore I do not require a USO UDO. I am providing these services independently, and I am going to be logging in as any of you that are licensed. And we'll talk about, if those of you that need any supervision or direction, what will be different. I log in, I log right into my IEP software. Now, when I log in, I see my own students, as you can see what I'm seeing here. And in order to do the related service log, you need to have a finalized IEP. The student has to have, of course, services on that IEP, and the IEP needs to be current, and the services need to be dated the current school year that you are in. So there are two different ways to enter related service logs. One is using the individual methodology, and that is just by, I'm going to click on Allison Jones. I'm going to click on Allison's black box, which is her IEP document. And you notice up in the tabs across the top, we have log entries. And if I click on log entries and slide down to the related service log, once I get to the related service log, I will see, because I'm in here as a speech pathologist, I'm going to see just speech or anything else that is not Medicaid eligible for claiming, such as music therapy, hypnotherapy. Those you will also see in the drop-down menu. But I'm going to see my main services of speech. And if I click on the IEP related service, these are the services that are on Allison's IEP. We are recording this, and also in the interest of time, because we only do have the hour, if you have any questions, just pop them into the chat room, and Carrie is monitoring the chat room, and I'm going to try it as well, and we will definitely answer those questions. So I'm going to select that I'm doing individual speech, and when I select that, over here to the right is what is actually on the IEP. So for Allison, she has individual speech 3 times a week for 30 minutes, and it's delivered in the therapy room. So my next step is to scroll down. Log type is log provided, and that will be default to log provided. I also have a student not available, which means that Maggie was not, I'm sorry, Allison was not available. Allison might have been in the nurse's office, or Allison might have been in timeout. Allison is not available. She's not absent, she's just not available. Same way with you, the provider not being available. You are in the building, you're not absent, but you're not available to provide services during this time. You got pulled out for an emergency meeting, or you had to attend a meeting. School closed is exactly what we're saying. School is closed. Staff shortage, I find this one a little comical, since if there's a staff shortage, you wouldn't be entering anything in there. But the administration might be using staff shortage to indicate that the student is supposed to be getting services, did not get services because there is not enough staff. And then, of course, student absent and provider absence are exactly what they say. So we're going to go to service provided. My provider name is going to pop in there because, remember, I'm logged in here as Sally Speech. My ratio is going to be what's my actual ratio. So this is an individual, and I am seeing her as an individual. If I was a group and she's supposed to be in a group of 5 to 1, but there's only 3 in the group that day, then I would be putting in 3 to 1 in the group. The ratio is exactly how many kids are in the group, not how many are supposed to be in there. So I indicate that this is 1 to 1. My quantity, I'm going to be putting in, there's 1 service per day, and that's the only way I can add these. I can add more than 1 day, but I can only add 1 per day. The setting is going to pop up. This is the actual setting. And this one is North Pine Hills Elementary. And then my start time. Now you'll notice that my duration down here is 30 minutes because that comes from the IEP. But as soon as I put in my actual start time, so I started this service at 9 o'clock in the morning, and then I put in my end time, I ended this at 9:30 in the morning. Now my duration leaves the drop-down box, and my calculated duration is automatically entered here. If I have additional session times, right now with the pandemic, the state is allowing us to break up services. So if I did 9:15 on this service, but then later on in the day, I did the other 15 minutes, I can click here to add session times. Come on, click here to add session times. For some reason, my hyperlink isn't working. So we're going to come back to that. So I'm going to go down to 30 minutes. So I have my session start time 9 o'clock, session end time 9:30. Now I also must indicate now whether or not this is telehealth or not. And this was added last April due to the pandemic because there are so many services now being delivered telehealth. And as a result of that, there is some flexibility. Now, this RS log, the purpose of this RS log is to log your services. Once the services are logged in here, the logging of information can be used for a number of reasons. It can be used for maintaining maintaining records for Medicaid services or Medicaid claiming. It also can be used for maintaining information about case logs. How many services are you delivering to particular students, as well as this is used as an attendance log for each individual student, because it does keep track of how much time a student is getting service. So after I've delivered telehealth service, I indicate my CPT code. I have a hyperlink to click, and the hyperlink is giving me all the different CPT codes allowable for individual speech. Now, a lot of people ask, why do you have OT and PT services in there? And it's my understanding that OT and PT services and speech services are interchangeable. You actually can use each other's. I don't know of too many that do, but we did not want to hide them from each other in the event that there was a crossover of services. So I'm going to click on 92507, the most common CPT code for individual speech, and I click on Save. So now I have everything about this particular service. I've got the service, I've got whether provided or not, who actually provided it, the ratio, the time that it started, the time that it ended, giving us the duration. And then I also have the CPT code. So the next thing that I need to do is I need to add the actual service date. So here's my calendar over here. And my calendar is, as you notice, is only active up until today. So in other words, I can't enter services in the future. I can, however, enter services from last week. So I'm going to enter today because today is the day I'm providing this service. So I'm clicking on the number, and that will actually give me the unit of service that has been provided. All right, so once I've done that, now I click on add. Melissa Mosher, we need you to mute, please. So now that I click on add, and this will add that service to the calendar. So now I look down here and I have my related services entries. Here's all the information. I have a little white box here where I can click into, and the little white box pops up, and I have a text box. And this is where I enter the notes. This is a text box, and this will expand. I can enter as many as I want, as much as I want. But remember that the notes are not intended to be essays. They're intended to be a note about the progress made on the goal that you are working on. Speaking of the goal that you are working on, you have actually the opportunity to view goals and objectives right here, right directly from the student's record. So here are the goals and objectives on the student's IEP. And remember, this is a demo database, so I don't have any speech goals in here. I apologize, but I typically would. So once I've entered my notes, this is the way I want it to be. I can hover over to read my notes, or I can click on the little paper and I can read my notes. Once everything is the way that I want it to be, I click on the e-signature. When I click on the e-signature, the electronic signature pops up, and it's indicating that I understand and agree that everything in here is accurate. And when I click sign, this does a date stamp Daheim, so that this is now signed by Sally Speech on 12/14, 8/16/10 a.m. Right now, I can still delete this entry if I made a mistake, but as soon as I hit save, I no longer can delete that entry. I only can invalidate it. Now, it's important to know that only you can enter notes and only you can e-sign. So I might be able to add a note. I can add an entry for you, but I cannot make any kind of signature, or I cannot have any kind of note signed. I also, if I had a USO UDO, the USO UDO's name, there would be a little notepad here for them, and there would also be a little ink pen there for them to sign. So if I need supervision or direction, that will automatically pop up, the notes and the pen. And as soon as they sign, their name appears in here. All right, so now I hit save, and that entry, I'm going to go back to the log entries, back to the related service log, and here's my log down here. That's adding individual services day by day. Now I can also add, so let's make believe I didn't add my services for last week. So I'm going to add some services for last week. So I do my individual, I do my service provided, Sally Speech, it's one-on-one, and all of these services were delivered at 9 in the morning. And by the way, when I add more than one service, they all have to have the same start and end time. If it's a different start and end time, I need to add them separately. So last week I gave her services on Monday, and I also gave her services on Friday. So I click on the first day and make it orange, and then the second day I just need to click on the little box and right to the upper left of the number. Were they telehealth sessions? They both were. And what was my CPT code? That for speech? 92507. Hit on save, and now I click on add. And when I click on add, I now have two entries here. I can enter my notes for the first one, put in my notes here. And I also can put in my notes for the second one. And one of the things that you want to make sure is that you are denoting progress or lack of progress in your notes. Make sure that you indicate some sort of indication about progress. And then I sign each one, and I have entered 2 sessions at the same time using the individual log. Any questions on that? I'm going to put anything in the chat box. So
Yeah, there's a couple questions.
yes. So where do you find the save on the RS log? And the save, as you saw, was down here on the bottom. So after I enter all my information, I scroll right down to the bottom of my screen, and that's where I will see my save button. I sometimes like to print my notes at the end of the month to review. How would I do this? Hold on to that thought, and we'll do that in a minute. When you delete a note, can you go back in and enter a new note for the same day? Yes, that's a very good question. You can do that. And when you delete a note, you don't delete it. You invalidate it, and it will stick in here. So let me invalidate this, this one on the, so I need to save this. So I saved my 2 that I just entered. Now I'm going to invalidate the one that I entered today. So when I invalidate it, it leaves. I'm going to hit save, and it's gone from here, but when I go into my invalidate button, there it is. And I can still access those notes. Well, I guess I can access those notes. I thought you could, but you can't access those notes. But I certainly can add a new entry for today. All right, so the question is, I like to print my notes at the end of the month. So I go back out to the My Students screen, and I have all of my students here. And if at the end of the month I want to print my notes, I go to Letters and Reports. And in Letters and Reports, I have a variety of letters and I have a variety of reports, which is new to you because you haven't had access to these. And there is a report in here, and it's called Summary of Daily Notes. So I'll be able to click on Summary of Daily Notes. I'll be able to click on Process. And I put in my start date. I'm going to put in 7/1/20 so that I can see if I can get some extra notes in here. And I'm going to put in today's date, which is 12/14/20. I'm going to do all service groups, and I'm going to choose the provider, Sally Speech. And she doesn't need USO UDO, but if she did, then I would indicate that I would want my USO UDO notes. Or maybe I don't want her notes. Maybe I just want mine. So I click on Next, and what it's going to do now is go through and collect the notes on all of those kids. And I will have a list of just notes. All right, I have the student information. Can you see my screen? So you can see the notes. Okay, so this is the report that I will get. So here's John Adams and all of his notes. Here's Gary Anderson and his notes. Jim Bohane. So this is how I can get my notes. Now, if I want to do just one student, I just select that one student. USO is under the supervision of, so if I'm a teacher of speech and hearing, I need the direction, or USO is under the supervision and UDO is under the direction. So if I'm a CODA, certified occupational therapy assistant, I need to work under the direction of a licensed occupational therapist. A speech pathologist needs to provide direction for teacher of speech and hearing. So that's what USO UDO means. All right, so now that I've looked at the individual, now I'm going to show you something that's magical, and it's just for you providers. So your supervisors can't see this because it's only provided to those of you that are providers for for services, speech services, OT services, counseling services, PT, etc. It's called the Related Service Attendance Wizard. And I click on Related Service Attendance, and all of my students will pop up on my screen. So I'm going to look at one day at a time. So if I look at the service, my service is speech, and I'm looking at today. So at the end of today, actually, you know what? I'm going to do Friday. I'm going to do Friday. So at the end of the day on Friday, I can click on here, and all of my kids, oh, school was closed. I didn't do Friday, I did Sunday. Let's change this. Silly me. All right, so I'm looking at the 11th, okay? So on the 11th, I need to select my service, which is speech. So on the 11th, which was Friday, these are all of my students. So every student that I have, so I can do a group. So I did John Adams. I provided service, as you can see across the top: service provided, student not available, student absent, provider not available, provider absent, see comments, or school closing, and then also not scheduled. So I have a small group, and I provided service to John. Gary was in that group, and also Susan Crane was in that group. Now, Julia Foster was supposed to be in that group, but she was absent. And I'm going to go to my next. And the setting, well, the setting is going to be for all of them, and these were all in the North Pine Hills Elementary. My actual ratio for that group, even though there was supposed to be 4 kids in it, only 3 were in that group. My start time for this group was at 10 o'clock. So I put in 10 o'clock. And my end time was 10:30. And this is for all of the students right now. The data that I'm entering right now is for all of the students. Now, my CPT code for all these students are 92508. Now, I emphasize all because when I go to my next window, when I go to my next screen, I will have the opportunity to individualize these sessions. So I go to my next screen, and this is letting me know that I've entered group information for all of these students, and if I need to make any changes, I'll be able to make it in the next screen. So I click on OK. So now I have all 4 of my students. So here's John Adams. So I click on John, and with John, my start time was 10, but he left early. John had to leave early. So I can indicate that John left at 10:20. And I can put in my notes there too to let me know why John left. I indicate whether or not John is telehealth, and none of these kids are, so I'm not going to click the telehealth box. The CPT code is still the same for John. So I'm going to put in my notes here, just like I did earlier. And then I indicate he left early for a dentist appointment. And then Gary, same thing with Gary. I click on my pencil and I indicate he was in the group. He stayed for the whole time. So all I need to do is enter notes for Gary. Each one of these students, you can view their goals and objectives right from inside this text box. So if I want to copy anything from goals and objectives, I can. Some people like to put in a piece of the goal. I will also indicate what kind of progress there is. And then Susan is the same. She hung out for the whole session. So all I need to do is write in her goals. I'm sorry, write in her notes in here. And Julia was absent. So I can indicate that Julia's been absent. So I can say she was out sick today. Or if I want to indicate in there anything, I don't have to. It's optional. So now I hit on next. When I go to next, I'm going to get all 4 kids. So here's all 4 kids, and there's the information. Now look at Julia. Julia was supposed to be, I selected individual for Julia, and I put her in for the group. So that actually can be an error That actually is, wow, that was supposed to be a group for her. So I'm going to go back because she wasn't absent for her individual. And I am going to go back here and I am going to delete Julia. Actually, I'm not going to be able to delete her here. Sorry about that. So I'm going to follow through with that, and then I can invalidate that entry. All right, so now here they all are. I'm going to submit. And when I submit, I have the ability to sign all of them at once. Because I went back, I lost my notes. So I'm going to cancel this and start over again. So related service attendance wizard, I get to select today. I click on next. Always forget to select my service, but the nice thing is it always reminds me. I get to select my students, service provided, Susan, service provided for Julia. I want to look at my group, and she was absent. So I'm going to put in student absent. Click on next. The setting is the North Pine Hills Elementary School. My actual ratio is 3:1. My start time is 10. And my end time is 10:30. My CPT code 92508. I go to my next screen. And I've related, it's telling me I've done a related service group access, and I have. And this is where I enter information for each student. Remember, John left early. So we're going to put in here that John left at 10:20. And by the way, you don't need to worry whether or not these are claimable services. You need to enter in everything that you would typically do for a service, whether it is Medicaid claimable or not. And the software, the individual district software, will indicate whether or not these services are claimable. It's not something that you need to be concerned about. And Julia was absent still, so we're going to see about sick today. Okay, I click on next. Here's all my services. I can look at the entire screen to make sure it is what I want. And then I click on submit. And once I click on submit, all of those logs will pop right into the student's calendar. And I get the opportunity to sign them all at once. So I click on sign all, and then I can finish. Once I finish, I've added all of those services to the student's logs. If I need to invalidate any of those services, and go back to Julia Foster. So if I needed to invalidate that related service log that I entered incorrectly, I would be able to click right here and invalidate it. Now here's what I hear from the field about the related service group access. I hear from the field that the providers really like this for all of their data entry. They use the related service group attendance for everything. And what they do is that they'll do even individual. They'll do all of their services, because when they get to that screen where they can individualize each student, they have everything all in one location. And they like that fact. And you'll also notice that the services that we provided are down here. So I can't make a mistake and I can't put in another service, another group service for the same day for these students. So I can do individual. I can do individual for Jim. I can do individual for Julia. I can do individual for Allison. I can do individual for Maggie, all on today. But what ends up happening is I will add the school. The ratio is 1:1. I'm not going to put in the start time because these were all different start times. But the CPT code was the same. So I'm going to put that in there, except for one student. And then when I go to next, this is where I'll be able to individualize each one. So for Jim, I click on my pencil, and for Jim, my start time was at 8:30. So I click on 8:30. And my end time was 9 o'clock. And for Jim, this was a telehealth session. I have my CPT code in there, which was correct, and then I put in my notes. For Julia, her start time was not until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. She was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and her CPT code, I use this time in her session to work on the evaluation. So I'm going to indicate that I use this time for some evaluation time. I believe that's down here. Evaluation of speech, sounds, etc. And so that's what I did during this time for Julia. And then I put in my notes here. Allison was, oh, I forgot to put in 2:30, sorry. So great, the software tells you why you can't move on to the next one. So with Allison, her start time was at 10. So I indicate her start time being 10. And her service was not a telehealth, so I can leave that as not being checked. And it's really important now that we indicate whether or not a service was telehealth. And again, I put in my notes here. And Maggie K, the same thing. Maggie's session was shortchanged. She started at 1 and she had to end at 1:20. So I indicate that right in here. And that was a telehealth session. And I indicate that internet problems ended session early. And then I click on next. And now I have all of my kids that I did for the individual. I click on submit. And I can sign them all. There we go. And when I finish this, and I go back to the individual calendars, I'm going to go back to Maggie K, and we'll see that in log entries, related service log, Maggie has that session today, and there it is for 20 minutes. Now, I also can put in, perhaps at the end of the day, I made up some of that time with Maggie. So at 2:30, I was able to reconnect with Maggie. The internet was taken care of, and I was able to do 2:30 to 2:40 and provide her with the rest of her session. No codes available. Oh. All right, I disregard that. I have to get back to you on how that works. Oh, I know why, duh. It was music therapy up there. That was silly for me. All right, so you have any questions besides the last screw up that I just did? Any questions on any of the related service wizard? How do we indicate a makeup session? You indicate a makeup session by indicating right in the notes that this is a makeup session. There's no button to click or anything like that to indicate that it is a makeup session. And the software will automatically determine whether or not that makeup session is claimable if the student is Medicaid eligible. So you don't have to worry about whether or not it's Medicaid eligible. What's more important is that you just indicate the fact that you did make up the session. Good question. Now, in addition to the other letters and reports that you now have access to, I want to show you some of the others that you might be interested in. So you have this report that there's going to be more related to the RS log in here. You will have access to the RS log, being able to run a report on your student attendance. So you will be able to find out individual students and how many sessions you provided to those students. You'll also be able to run a report for yourself. So almost like a case log of how many sessions that you provided to whom. We're going to make sure that all of those, you see this, all these say RS log, these are all going to be available to you in your letters and reports section. So here's students with attendance by provider, and then here's the students with attendance by service. All of these different reports will be available to you. You also will have this report available to you. It's right down here, summary of related services with CPT codes. If you wanted to get a printout of exactly what you did, you would run this, and it would be in district, because you're taking it from your information that's in your side of the software, even though it's the district is sharing the document with you. So I'm going to do for the month of December, I'm going to show you what this would look like. And you can do this for individual students, or you can do it for a group of students. So I'm going to put in Sally's speech, because that's me. And when I click on next, I'm going to get this printout of all the services that I've provided, along with the notes, along with my CPT codes, along with my MPI number, my license number. All of that is all in this one report. I only have one student for this month, but you'll be able to get all of the kids that you have. I think I had Maggie selected, which is why I only got the one student. But if I go out here on this page, and I go back in and I run letters and reports, and I go back down and I run that same report. Oh, I picked on. I am not having a great day. It must be too early in the morning for me. Haven't had my cup of tea yet. I selected out of district, and I meant to select in district. There we go. And so I want all my 4 students on my students page, so I can get all of them. All right, so now I want to do 12-1-20 and 12-14-20. I want all my service groups. I want Sally's speech. And I'm going to click on process, and I'm going to get, it's processing, as you can see, and I'll get a PDF report. And there we go. So here is my log notes for Julia. Here's my log notes for Allison, and I have my notes in here. This is everything, or that summary of notes that we showed you before. You would just be getting notes. And it actually tells you what date you signed it and what time you signed it. So that's another report that's going to be available to you. I think you'll like the additional reports, letters and reports that are going to be available to you. There's another report, I'm just going to sidetrack here a little bit, another report that I particularly like that we'll make sure is also available to you. And it's called Student Programs, Related Services, Modifications, and Accommodations. And when you click on that report, it gives you a quick summary of all the kids that you have selected. And you can choose to put everything on there, or just put on programs, related services, put on accommodations, whatever you want to put on this particular report. But it's a nice quick summary of the students and what they're getting, what their accommodations are, what their modifications are. So that's now going to be available to you as well. All right, any other questions about the RS log? I do want to do a little bit of an experiment here with the multiple times in the same day. This is something that was newly added, because the state has given some mandate relief during the pandemic that if you can only work with a student, say 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the afternoon, that those 2 sessions together will count as a full session. So you can add, let's do speech therapy individual, and we provided the one-on-one, and the first session was at 9 in the morning, and then the second session, this ended at 9:15 because that's about all that the student could last. And then we want to click here to add additional session times, and that's supposed to pop up and give you a new window. The only thing I can think of is that the window is somewhere else, and I don't see it. So I'm not sure why that's not working, but I will definitely check that out. But you should click here to add additional session times, and you get a second window that will give you the opportunity to put in a second session from, say, 1 o'clock to 1:15. And then you enter them on the date that you want. So I'm going to click on today, put in my CPT code. Maybe that's what I need to do. Oh, it's still not letting me add it. Okay, I don't know why that's not working, but I'll find that out. And Carrie, I will let you know what the issue was with that so that you can share that.
Okay.
Okay. I talked so fast, I stumbled over myself because I knew we only had an hour. Anybody have any questions? Hey, Bruce, what do you think? I'm picking on you because you're right at the top of my windows. I can see you.
I know sometimes in our school we'll do a regularly scheduled individual session, let's say, and then we may possibly do a makeup session the same day.
Yeah.
Can we do that?
Yes, you definitely can do that. So you could do only one of them in the wizard. And then
Okay.
the second one you would have to put in the individual calendar. That's a good question.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. Okay.
Somebody asked, what if you change the quantity day to 2? So in other words, it was 2 sessions. So it's the quantity here. You can't change this in the related service calendar. You can only enter in one day at a time.
Lorraine, could you explain again how you do a group session and an individual on the same day? Because you started explaining, I don't understand it.
Sure. Actually, it was 2 individuals on the same day, or 2 groups on the same day. In other words, in the wizard, you can only put in, let's do this. You can only put in one, like if I do service provided for John group, it'll end up going down here. You see service provided individual, and if it ends up down here because I added it via group, via the wizard. Now, if I needed to add a second individual for John on the same day, so that was for today, right? I would need to go back to John's calendar. So in order to add 2 individuals on the same day, I need to go to John's calendar. So here I want individual, service provided, Sally speech, it's one-on-one. And so the afternoon session that I did for John was 1 o'clock. And this is going to be my makeup session. So here's the session in the morning, the 30-minute session, which was 10 to 10:30. Oh, here it is. I'm sorry. It was 20 minutes, 10 to 10:20. But I'm going to be adding a full session for the afternoon. So I can indicate that 92507, and then I put in my 914. And then I indicate in my notes that this was a makeup session. That's the only way that we have the ability to indicate that it was a makeup session, and then follow it by my notes. Okay, so now what will happen is John will have 2 services. He'll have 2 services on the 14th. And 2 services on the 14th will indicate one of them will be claimable because it was 30 minutes and the other one will not. And the software does all that for you. Now I also need to click to sign. Now you notice I added it before I signed it, and that's okay too. I can add it. Now somebody made a comment in here that it does work if you take the CPT code for digital time. Okie dokie, let me get out of here and play with that. That might be what I was missing. So I'm going to go to a different student. Thank you, whoever that was, from everyone. Doesn't say from who. So let's go to John Khalil, and let's add a related service entry. So I'm going to do speech and language group. We'll do a group. 2 to 1. And I'm going to do 3 o'clock and 3:30, 3:15. Click here to add additional times. Oh, it's still not working. Nope, it's still not, I'm still not getting it. All right, well, we will definitely find out why that's not working the way it should be and get back to you. All right. That was good. Good thought. Any other questions? Now, Carrie, did you want to talk about when you want them to start using this and how this is going to work now going forward?
I think we'll do that separate.
Okay. All right, well, if we don't have any other questions, wow, we made it in 50 minutes. This is, yes, being recorded, and I will get that recording to Carrie. And also, I sent you 2 different manuals that talk about how to do the data entry. The only thing missing in the manuals is the piece about the telehealth. And it's very important that the telehealth box be checked if you are providing telehealth service, because there's some leeway with the state allowing for some different, for claiming for Medicaid, there's some relaxation of the rules if the service is being provided via telehealth. So those 2 documents are resource guides for you. Also in the question mark up here, this is the what used to be called online help. And you click on Frontline support, and it takes you to what we refer to as the Learning Center. And in the Learning Center, you have the opportunity to click on, say you want to look for a video, you can type in videos, and there are videos in here on the use of the RS log. So there's all different videos that are available, and you can go down to R for related service log, and you'll see that there is information. I'm going to go make it even more specific and say related service log. There's all kinds of information about the related service log. Here's the attendance by student. Here's the attendance by service. And then let's even make it even more specific and see if we can find that video, related service log video. We do a search, and there's reference guides. Hey, where the heck is that video? It's hiding. I'll keep trying. It was in here. But this does have a great deal of information in it in the Learning Center. All right, well, I thank everybody for your time this morning, and enjoy your week. This is the last full week of school before we all get to get a little bit of a break. And I hope you all enjoy your holidays tremendously.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.